Chapter 3 of Cross Your Heart, a Julie and the Phantoms fanfiction, written by xxPrettyLittleTimeBombxx, read aloud by SkyAsimaru. If you enjoy this podfic, you can check out the original story on Archive of Our Own. If you would like to hear more of my recordings or see some of my own work, you can find me through the pen and screen name of SkyAsimaru. Cross Your Heart, Chapter 3, Epilogue, in every form, in every universe. The events of the last 2 days had been exhausting for both of them in different ways. But the discovery of Luke's heartbeat had offered up the extra boost of energy Julie had needed to follow Luke down to the studio. To say that Alex, Reggie, and Willie are surprised to see them is an understatement. Reggie is the first to recover, his startled expression turning into a gleeful smirk when he takes in the sight of Julie's hand held firmly in Luke's own.
"Back so soon?" he drawls playfully. "Would have thought for sure we wouldn't see you two lovebirds until at least sometime tomorrow morning."
Julie's face heats at the implication, but Luke sidesteps the comment completely, dropping her hand so he can yank Reggie forward by the wrist.
"Luke, come on, buddy. It was a joke, I swear."
"Forget about it, Reg. Just hold still for a sec. I'm trying to see something,"
Luke says, shushing his protests. It takes no more than a few seconds for Luke to locate the pulse point at his wrist. And Reggie, whom Julie has always insisted is much more astute than most people tend to give him credit for, is quick on the uptake. In an instant, the fingers of his free hand fly up to search for a pulse below his jaw. It doesn't come as much of a surprise to Julie when Reggie's reaction comes in the form of a toothy grin and a loud exclamation of, "Cool!" Then Luke and Reggie are rounding on Alex, the latter hollering about how he didn't consent to be manhandled, while Reggie plops down into the space next to him on the couch before lunging for his neck. On his other side, Luke makes quick work of rolling up the sleeve on their friend's signature pink hoodie. Willie, who'd been smart enough to step back from the tussle at hand, comes to stand next to Julie. The amusement is all too apparent in his voice as he asks,
"Are they always like this?"
"Always," Julie says fondly, "but you get used to it."
"Looking forward to it," he chuckles. "I'm Willie, by the way."
"I know," Julie says through a smile. "I'm Julie. It's nice to finally meet you."
"I know," he echoes, grinning down at her. "It's nice to meet you, too."
"I don't get it," Alex exclaims as he paces in front of the coffee table. He pivots abruptly and points accusingly at Luke and Reggie.
"How are you both so calm about this?"
Then, head-whipping toward Julie, he adds,
"How are you so calm about this? I mean, this is a big freaking change, and I'm pretty sure that when you die, you're supposed to stay dead. Unless, of course, we're zombies," Reggie says thoughtfully.
"Pretty sure zombies don't have heartbeats, you goof,"
Luke replies.
"Touché,"
Reggie grumbles back. "You're right, Alex. It's a huge change," Julie agrees in an attempt to soothe the anxious boy in front of her. Her expression softens when she catches Luke's eye as she adds, "But change doesn't have to be bad. It can be good sometimes, right?"
"Yeah, hot dog. change can be good," Willie echoes, taking advantage of the fact that Alex has stopped pacing. He sidles up to him and gives his ribs a gentle prod with one elbow. Alex teeters slightly, smiling despite himself as he straightens up. But any semblance of calm that settles over his features lasts about as long as it takes for him to fully turn his attention over to Willie. There's a question on the tip of his tongue that Alex never gets the chance to ask. For a moment, he's brimming with hopeful optimism over the possibility that, despite having been dead for decades, maybe Willie had also come away from all of this, having somehow reacquired his heartbeat, too. But Alex visibly deflates in disappointment when Willie shakes his head. "It's fine, Alex. Really," Willie promises, the corners of his mouth tugging up and into a small, reassuring grin. "I wasn't expecting it to be the same for me as it is for you three, so there's no reason to be disappointed."
As if to emphasize his point, Willie makes a show of holding his hand out to Julie. Taking her cues from him, she musters up a small smile of her own as she reaches her hand out toward him. She already knows what's going to happen before they even make contact. But the sight of her hand passing through Willie's as easily as it might have passed through smoke is sobering nevertheless. Like the rest of them, Julie is curious about what it all means, and about any other newfound abilities that might have come along with the three of them having pulses again. So far, it seems like there aren't any new abilities to speak of. Earlier, she'd been so sure that this newest development would mean that Luke would suddenly become visible to the rest of the world. The theory had quickly been squashed when they'd run into her tia Victoria out on the driveway and on her way to Pilates. The fact that her tia hadn't bristled at the sight of her coming out of the house with a teenage boy in tow was all the proof Julie had needed to confirm she was still the only one who could see him. And while it was becoming increasingly clear that Luke might not be as much of a ghost as he'd been when they'd first met, it was also clear that he wasn't fully alive either. At least, not yet.
I still don't get it," Alex murmurs. "Why us? What makes us more special than any other dead dude still hanging around down here on Earth?"
It's the million-dollar question that none of them can quite figure out the answer to. Even Willie finds himself coming up empty. He'd been dead for far longer, sure, and he's been stuck at the Hollywood Ghost Club for long enough to bear witness to just how much power Caleb's been able to harness for himself in the afterlife. But none of the knowledge he possesses seems to come with answers fit to satisfy the group's collective curiosity. His best guess is that it has something to do with Julie and the fact that the boys had managed to free themselves of the club stamps that should have been their demise.
"No one's ever done that before,"
he whispers, voice quivering with fear when he adds,
"I've never seen him so angry."
It's the first time Willie's cheerful demeanor falters, and an involuntary chill runs down her spine when she thinks about how long he'd been trapped under Caleb's thumb. The unsettling feeling coursing through her transforms into rage when she remembers that if Caleb had had it his way, her boys would have been his newest prisoners.
Well, I know we ruled out which pretty quick, but I still think all signs point to you being a little bit magic,
Reggie says to her. Julie snorts at that, finding humor in the fact that Reggie's always stuck to his guns about her being something more extraordinary than the average human. Part of her wants to tell him that nothing makes her feel more ordinary than standing in a room full of ghosts, the group of them filling in the once cold and empty spaces of her mother's old studio with the warmth of new memories. But then she catches sight of Luke, who's looking at her with a sense of open adoration she's only ever caught glimpses of before, looking at her like he wholeheartedly believes she's a little bit magic too. And suddenly the urge to deflect or argue melts away entirely. Reggie seems all too happy to take Julie's silence for admission and quickly moves on, directing his attention over to a newly hatched thought.
So, if our hearts work now, do you guys think maybe that means our stomachs work too?
Guess there's really only one way to find out, buddy,
Luke says. Reggie rubs his hands together, already excited over the possibility of being able to eat again. Julie half expects him to usher them all toward the door and in the direction of the kitchen. But it soon becomes clear that he's got his sights set on something Casa Molina can't provide. And that something is pizza from a very specific shack down by the ocean. Apparently, as Reggie tells it, it had been a favorite haunt of Sunset Curves back in the 90s, a place where they'd go to celebrate whenever they wrapped a particularly successful day of busking down at the pier.
You want to go all the way down to Santa Monica for pizza that might not even be as good as it was 25 years ago?
Alex asks skeptically.
Okay, 1, you're talking like we're gonna get stuck on the 5 when you know it's gonna take us like 2 seconds to poof there.
Reggie starts, holding up a finger in front of Alex's face.
2, it still smelled the same last time we went down there. Even Luke said so.
He juts out his bottom lip, eyes going impossibly wide before he pleads.
Come on, Alex. Don't you want your first meal with a brand new heartbeat to be memorable?
Alex stares at Reggie for a moment longer before he caves.
Fine, but only if you stop making that ridiculous face, and only if you promise not to pick anything with pineapple.
No pineapple? You're no fun.
Those are the rules. Take it or leave it.
Deal,
Reggie says quickly before Alex can change his mind.
You know, I think we'll pass,
Luke says suddenly, chancing a glance at Julie, who nods in agreement.
It's been a long day.
Alex, ever the perceptive one, shoots Luke an understanding look before he rounds up Reggie and Willie, the 3 of them taking their leave. After the boys poof out, it's all too easy for Julie to slip her hand into Luke's and lead him back up to her bedroom. It's even easier for her to tug him down onto the bed with her once she shuts the door behind them, the both of them easily settling into one another, as though they've done this a million times before. And with her head nestled comfortably against his chest, and Luke's fingers tracing patterns up and down her back, Julie's body finally gives in, fully relaxing for the first time since they said their goodbyes. For a while, the only sound that fills her ears is that of Luke's even breathing. Coupled with the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, the urge to let her eyes slide shut is impossible to resist. Distantly, she thinks that Luke must have dozed off as well. The exhaustion that had come along with the events of the last 2 days finally taking its toll. But just before Julie can follow him into sleep, she stirs when the arm Luke's got wrapped around her tightens its grip, pulling her in even closer than she'd been before. A smile that's impossible to contain spreads wide across her face when her ear ends up pressed right over his heart, and she hears the steady thumps ringing out from beneath Luke's ribs. I think that's my new favorite sound, she sighs sleepily. It used to be... She cuts herself off when Luke hums questioningly in response. What? He prompts, the hand on her waist giving her a gentle squeeze. It doesn't matter, she says, suddenly feeling shy as her cheeks warm over having nearly said too much. Anyway, it's embarrassing. I'll bet it's not, Luke murmurs. Come on, boss. Don't you think we've kept enough secrets from each other? Don't you think it's time we stop? Emboldened by the truth of his words, she sighs, steeling herself to pick up where she left off. Funnily, it used to be the way you call me boss. He chuckles affectionately over the admission, and she joins him with a small giggle of her own. When the sound of their laughter subsides, Julie lifts her head, propping her chin up on his chest so she can get a good look at him. Now, though, it's definitely this, she adds, pressing her palm over his heart. Luke whispers her name once, letting it trail off into the silence of her room, before he draws her up and into a kiss that makes her stomach swoop and her toes curl in her socks. I love you, you know, Julie says some time later, when they finally pull away. I wanted to tell you before you left. I should have told you way before then. It doesn't matter, Luke says, brushing a thumb across her bottom lip. You're saying it now. But it does, Julie says firmly, because I need you to know that I don't care what you are. I love you. In every form, in every timeline, in every universe. I'll always love you, Luke. I love you too, Julie, he whispers back. I've always loved you. You know that, right? I do, she nods. She seals the vow with a kiss that's more of a brush of lips than anything else. It's the softest of any of the kisses they've shared all night, but it feels different. It feels bigger. And maybe that's because it feels like a promise of more. A promise of 1,000 lifetimes together, sharing quiet moments just like this one. It's by far the easiest promise that Luke's ever made in his life, and he knows without a shadow of a doubt that it's because he loves Julie in every form, in every timeline, in every universe, too. The end.
Thank you for reading. Please drop by the archive and let the author know what you thought of their work.